And we are live here at the Omni in Dallas, Texas at SEC Media Days. If you're watching live on YouTube, man, I am smiling ear to ear because when this day comes, that means that college football season is around the corner. Like SEC Media Days is to college football season what Thanksgiving is to Christmas. If you're listening on podcast, you're hearing a little bit of a buzz in the background, and there's nothing wrong with your AirPods or your car stereo or whatever. That's because you got some of the college football sickos that are, of course, a part of the college football media dialed in here on Radio Row. We got a lot to unpack. Around 4 o'clock yesterday, Radio Row started to become increasingly more thin. There was sort of an extra buzz in the room, a little extra buzz in this hallway, and you saw people one by one start to leave Radio Row. And then it became groups, then it became droves. And before you knew it, like Radio Row was turning into a little bit of a ghost town. And at first, like, where's everybody going? But those of us that were dialed into the college football 25 release were like, oh, they all went to their hotel room to go play the greatest thing that's been released in the last 11 years, which is, of course, the college football video game from EA Sports. So I didn't leave at 4 o'clock because I was still working on my plug and finding a way to play that game. But the good people here in Dallas, Texas, taking care of us. We played a couple of games last night. Got some thoughts for you on the game. Got some thoughts on my personal experience. Got some thoughts on the gameplay. Spoiler alert, it was awesome. So cool. We got SEC superlatives. It's preseason. And this is not going to be your standard superlatives, most likely to be president or most likely to be successful or most likely to X, Y, and Z. We have some of those on here, but I'm going to walk you through my preseason superlatives for the SEC for a number of different teams. We got Bama, Florida, Georgia. We got Texas on here. We got Ole Miss on here. So we'll get to that in just a second. But I also want to talk y'all through some conversation that's been had so far on Radio Row about Texas and their entry point into the SEC. Because Nick Saban, man, God bless him, he is at SEC Media Days. He is not here as a head coach. He's here working as one of us in the media, which is phenomenal. And he said something yesterday that got some folks in Austin, I think, a little bit out of sorts. Maybe there was some response there from the folks that are watching SEC Media Days for the first time in Austin, Texas, and I understand that. We'll talk about what he said. We had Garrett Nussmeier sit down with us at this very set yesterday. Y'all, I had never spoken to him before. After our 7-minute conversation, I left a massive Garrett Nussmeier fan. Like, after talking to him, I'm like, okay, that's a face of the franchise kind of guy. Feel really good about what he's going to be at LSU this season. Excited to show y'all that conversation. And then at some point in time during this live show, probably right around 30-ish or so minutes from now, we're going to have the Mouth of the South, host of the Paul Finebaum show. Paul Finebaum sitting right next to me. So when that happens, that's going to be live. We're not just going to like cut to a pre-taped interview. Like, he is going to walk up onto this set, sit down in this chair next to me, pick up that microphone, and we'll talk some ball. So there's going to be some commotion when that happens. We appreciate y'all sitting tight with us as that happens, but we got a lot to jump into, man. I mentioned all the things that we're going to talk about from college football 25 to superlatives, the Nuss interview, Texas, Kirby and Saban, the comp between them. College football season is here, all right? It is Tuesday, July 16th, 2024, the last one on the face of the planet. So glad to have you all a part of this. Lock in right now. There is no more time for us to be missing shows or missing podcasts or anything like that, all right? College football season is here. So best way to do that, subscribing to the channel, subscribing to the podcast feed, follow me on the socials, at JD Piquel, Twitter and Instagram, all right? So thank you so much for that, man. I'm fired up. Again, it really does feel like a holiday here, so let's get right to it, man. I promised y'all some superlatives. That feels like a good place to start. What are some of the superlatives that we have drawn up for you preseason now ahead of the glorious thing that is the college football season in 2024? More specifically, we're going to focus on the SEC because we're obviously at SEC Media Days. And I want to start with this one. Who has the greatest expectations in 2024? Now, the obvious ones, you say, well, JD, at Bama, expectations are always high. You say at Georgia, expectations are always high. I think at Ole Miss, I don't remember the last time expectations were this high. To put it in perspective now, Ole Miss has better odds to make the college football playoff than the Alabama Crimson Tide. If you told me that this time last year, I'd say, oh, my gosh, what happened to Nick Saban? Jackson Dart, we talked to him yesterday as well. We got that interview banked in for you, and we'll air that at a later date. That'll be a lot of fun. But I'm just saying, man, Ole Miss, with what they have at quarterback, with who they have at head coach, with what they did last season, and all the guys they bring back from last season. And then on top of that, the portal entries you've heard me talk about ad nauseum at this point. Like they have, and Lane Kiffin said this yesterday during his time with the media, they have a different looking operation when they get off the bus to play a football game. They got more dudes that resemble what Georgia has, what Alabama has. Now, do they have enough to win at the level they want to in 2024? Remains to be seen. But the expectations for Ole Miss, from where I'm sitting, are as high as they've been in recent memory. One more thing I'll say about Ole Miss. Expectations are earned. Pressure is privilege. Like all these things that we're talking about with Ole Miss right now, like they have earned the right to be in these discussions, to compete for the SEC championship and compete for a college football playoff berth. If you make the college football playoff, I don't think that's where the expectations stop for Ole Miss. I think they have to at least win a game when they get to that dance. So Ole Miss, greatest expectations, I believe, within the SEC if we're using the measuring stick of what is relative to previous expectations out there in Oxford. Here's a fun one. Now, I told y'all it's not going to be your standard most likely to succeed, although we have one of those on here as well when it comes to our superlatives. Most likely to beat punchline culture. Now, if you're just now tuning in, welcome. It's college football, nothing but college football. But punchline culture is a term we use a lot on this show relative to how social media perceives things going on in the college football sphere. Because we live in a day and age now where Twitter is, I mean, if Twitter was an Olympic sport, I think America would win gold every single year. Probably would sweep the podium, to be honest with you. And that's great. I'm all for some Twitter banter, and I'm all for a good joke on Twitter. But punchline culture has put us into this world where everyone is so quick to make a joke, to get a punchline, to have the upper hand on their counterparts on Twitter with something funny they said. And that's great, but also it leaves out context. It leaves out common sense. It leaves out allowing things to bake a little bit. And I think right now, the most likely team to beat punchline culture, in my mind, is Florida. Because right now, y'all, you check the Twitter sphere, it's rough out there for Florida. It is. People are saying Sunbelt Billy that. Florida's going to miss a bowl game this. And we've said this for a long time on this show, but we're saying it again at SEC Media Days. I think we keep using the wrong equation for Florida, man. I do. Shouts to Florida, man, if you're out there. I think we keep using the wrong equation for Florida, going back to my point here. We keep using the equation that last year's record of 5-7 plus the Hunger Games kind of schedule they're going to play in 2024 equals their 2024 outlook. And while that's not an irresponsible take, people have run with that thought and said, well, they were 5-7 last year. They're going to be even worse this year because of what they have in front of them. And we're totally ignoring everything that's going on with that team in Gainesville, Florida right now. We're totally ignoring that Graham Mertz had a really good year last year. We're totally ignoring they got him more weapons. We're totally ignoring that defense from a roster talent level should be much more improved. And so all those things combine to me to say, okay, get your jokes off while you want to right now. Make sure you get your punchlines out there while you have a chance right now. But I'm telling you, the punchline culture, when it comes time for 2024 to actually happen in the games to be played, I think Florida is about to beat the brakes off punchline culture. I am not calling my shot for Florida to win the SEC. I am not calling my shot for Florida to be a college football playoff team. But I have called my shot that they will make a bowl game and they will make somebody look a little bit silly when it comes time for them to play those big games in November. Another superlative here for you. Listen, we are very grateful and fortunate to do this for a job. Talk about college football every single day. To study college football for a living. Like people will have conversations with and they'll say, well, you know, how did you know that guy's name or this guy's name? And I'm like, it really comes down to how much time we have on our hands to give to this profession and give to the sport. So that's one. But at the same time, I'll be the first to admit there's a lot I don't understand about the 2024 college football season. There's a lot that I just don't know quite yet. And I think the team that I most don't understand is Missouri in the SEC. I don't know what to think. Because on one hand, they were awesome last year, right? They won double-digit football games. They beat Ohio State in the Cotton Bowl. Luther Burns back. I don't know how he's not the best player or the best wide receiver, rather, in College Football 25, the video game, after using him last night on College Football 25. Brady Cook is back, looking to build off another big season. The defense was great last year. So all these things are on one side of the equation. On the other side, though, you lose a lot of production on defense from last year's squad. You lose your defensive coordinator from last year's squad. as good as you feel about your running back room this year in Columbia, you don't have Cody Schrader on that roster. And so you take all those things, and then on top of that, you look at last year's record and the run they went on. Yes, you won double-digit ball games, but 4 of those ball games that you won were by 1 score. And I am all for winning by 1 score. I mean, if you had to win every single game by 1 score, shouts to Washington. Get it done. Get it done. Like, it doesn't matter if you win by 1 point or 100 points. A win is a win. But at the exact same time, if we're trying to project what they're going to be next season, I don't know. Because I don't know if you can bottle up 1-score victories and have them translate to the next season with those things that they lose. So I'm not telling you they're going to be bad. I'm not telling you they're going to win the SEC. I'm telling you, I quite frankly have the worst gauge for what they're going to be in 2024. The team that I most don't understand is Missouri. So keeping in this theme of understanding and not understanding, I think the team that's probably the most misunderstood across the SEC in 2024, there's 2 teams. The first one for me is South Carolina. Remember what we were saying this time last year about Shane Beamer and co? Remember all the talk around, hey, are they a dark horse to get to Atlanta? Is Spencer Rattler a dark horse to potentially be in New York for the Heisman Trophy ceremony? Because they finished the year so hot. Had 2 top 10 wins. They beat Clemson and Tennessee. They come into this season. And, like, to be honest, let's call a spade here. They had some bad luck. Now, bad luck is part of college football. Like, injuries are part of college football. And South Carolina had their fair share. Juice Wells wasn't available for a lot of the year. Your best offensive weapon. We're dinged up across the offensive line, and it showed multiple times throughout SEC play. We were at the Tennessee game, and, I mean, they could not give Spencer Rattler more than 2 Mississippis to the football. They had issues. And so you take last year and all the things that went wrong that, quite frankly, Shane Beamer can't control, and now we're having hot seat conversations about Shane Beamer? This is the same guy that this time last year we were talking about how he had overachieved his previous 2 seasons. So if you're going to overachieve 2 years in a row and you have 1 year where you underachieve with some things that, quite frankly, are not in your control, I think it's okay for us to give it a little bit more time. To me, the hot seat talk around Shane Beamer feels foolish. The other thing I'd say here, too, he's done a great job adding quarterbacks. Spencer Rattler got him through the portal, had a lot of success at South Carolina in spite of what they didn't have around him. Look who you have this year playing quarterback for you. 4-star cat Lenora Sellers. At On 3, we had Lenora Sellers as a top 10 quarterback when he came out of high school. Like, if you're talking about acquiring talent at the most important position in football, Shane Beamer's done that at a high level to this point. Now, it hasn't been, a home run every single time he's been there. I understand that, but, like, the fact he's acquired talent at the quarterback position, I think, deserves some recognition as well. So I think South Carolina is a bit misunderstood. Other team that I think is misunderstood in the SEC is Auburn. Because there's the New Mexico State part of things that happened last year, which Punchline Culture is having a field day with. And, I mean, God bless them. You're entitled to your opinion. But you also have to give the proper amount of attention to, in my mind, what they did against Georgia, what they did against Alabama. I understand the home field advantage. That's massive. But I think a lot of people are seeing the record at Auburn last year and just sort of mailing in what they're going to be this upcoming season. And I've said this for a while now. I think Peyton Thorne, what you saw last year, was like diet Peyton Thorne. Like, it wasn't the real thing that you're going to get this upcoming season. One, because of him not getting spring football. And, I mean, we've said that now probably for a record number of times on this podcast and on this show. People that watch this show know I feel that way. But also, I think the clear direction they're going to have now with Hugh Freeze and the weapons they have on offense from Cam Coleman to Keandre Lambert-Smith, that's going to be massive. Rivaldo Fairweather last season was Auburn's leading receiver. Now, Rivaldo Fairweather is going to be first-team All-NFL Combine when it's his time, just in terms of how he's built, the eye test, all those things. Like, he is a freak show. But if he's your leading receiver, you have problems at receiver. And so for Auburn going forward now, the way that they've sort of mended that, and I think the way they're trending, we got out there this past spring, and y'all, it's hard to define, it's hard to quantify. It felt different. It felt like, as an organization, the way that they handled business from spring practice to the way that the building ran, like, it felt like an organization that was ahead of just the year 2 they're going into. Like, it felt like a year 4, year 5 kind of operation. So I trust Hugh Freeze. I trust Auburn. I understand the hesitancy around Peyton Thorne, but I think there's a little bit of misunderstanding there around both Auburn and South Carolina. Now, here's a fun one, man. Most likely to have a Coke and Mentos situation on their hand. And those of y'all that have watched YouTube for a long time and Googled Coke and Mentos, you know what I'm talking about, or searched Coke and Mentos, you know what I'm talking about. Those of y'all that have tried this experiment, you know what I'm talking about. When you put the candy Mentos into a Coke bottle, it creates a chemical reaction that is similar to an atomic bomb. Like, I mean, it blows up. And I think that's Tennessee this year. And the obvious is Nico, right? Nico Iamaleava, all his physical tools. He was the number one player for us coming out of high school in the class of 2023. He's gifted. I mean, he can run. He's got great size. Got a rocket for an arm. I was really impressed going to see him in spring practice, the way he throws on the run. You pair that with the quantity of weapons they have in Knoxville. I've said many times, I think that's massive. I think their offense will be much more improved than they were a season ago. And then you pair that with what they have on defense. Like, say what you want about the offense they have this season. If you go out and score 40-ish a game, or you go have just a tremendous offensive output like you had in 2022, y'all, you've seen that movie before where you have a great offense, the defense can't hold up there into the bargain. I don't think that's the situation this year in Knoxville. I think the offense will be potent. I think the defense may not be one that's going to be, top of the SEC, but I think it's one of those defenses you can probably put a little bit of pressure on. You can lean on them a little bit. It's not this sprained ankle kind of defense where you got to be on crutches with your offense and, don't ask anything of that ankle. Don't ask anything of that defense. If you ask that defense to win a game for you, they can't do it. I think this defense has got a lot more under the hood, and for that reason, Tennessee could blow up and be a college football playoff team. Would not surprise me in the slightest. Given what Vegas thinks about them preseason, I believe their win total is right at 9.5. Vegas thinks they could be a college football playoff team as well, because that number, I think, to get in the dance is going to be right around 10-2 for an SEC team. So Tennessee, to me, Coke and Mentos is a superlative used for them going into 2024. So we look at the SEC. Here's another superlative. Who is most treated like old takeout? Now, we're here in Dallas, and we're, quite frankly, eating a lot of our meals out in the great city of Dallas. And when you finish your meal, if you have some leftovers, you take it back to the room or back to your house, you put it in the fridge, you leave it in the back of the fridge for a while. And if it was really good, maybe you go and get it for lunch the next day. But oftentimes, man, what happens to those takeout boxes? They sit back there for a day, 2 days. If you're really irresponsible like me, sometimes they stick around for the better part of a week or two. And so all that's to say is, like, who are we forgetting in the SEC right now? And I think the team that maybe isn't being forgotten being the right word, but the team that needs maybe a little bit more juice to them preseason is LSU. Because LSU now, everybody looks at the defense and says, oh, hey, they're far away, man. You lost 3 first-round draft picks on offense. I don't know where LSU's at. And it's fair to see what's on paper and have questions, because it's hard to lose that much on offense and to have that on defense coming back and be like, okay, yeah, we're going to win it all. But I don't think anyone's saying they're going to win it all right now in Baton Rouge. I just think they need a little bit more RESPE, to quote Michael Scott. I think it's irresponsible for us to also assume that the defense is going to stay where they are because of who they brought in Blake Baker to be the new DC out there, because of who they have at quarterback in Garrett Nussmeier, who we talked to yesterday. I'm going to show you that conversation a little bit later in this show. And because of the weapons they still have on offense. Kyron Lacey, CJ Daniels, Mason Taylor, like, they got some dudes offensively now to where maybe you don't score 40 a game, but if you score north of 35, you're going to win a lot of ball games. And if that defense goes from being in a triple-digit total defense kind of operation to maybe like, let's say, top 50 total defense, which I don't think is totally irresponsible with Harold Perkins playing back there for you on defense at linebacker or wherever you want to play him. There's a lot more to LSU than I think what meets the eye, and I think a lot more respect that needs to be given to the Tigers out there. I'm just saying, keep an eye on them. I would not forget them like that old takeout. Now, here's a fun classic superlative we get a lot when it comes time for us to give these out. If you were a part of your senior superlatives in high school, there was like most changed from freshman to senior year. Most changed in the SEC right now is Alabama. And yes, the obvious is the head coach. You got Nick Saban no longer there, so it's Kalen DeBoer's show. You have 33% production returning on defense. You got some new pieces via the portal. But also, let's talk about the narrative that's changed for Alabama. Because I think it used to be they were the Death Star, they were the bad guys. They were the team that was very easy to dislike. You saw that script day a lot of times at the top of the preseason rankings. Oftentimes you saw that script day hoisting the national championship trophy when Nick Saban was there. I don't think that's the case anymore when it comes to Alabama. Not that they won't hoist hardware, they won't win national championships, but there's a question mark around Alabama for the first time in a while. And so I think with that being the case, there are some folks that see the way that Kalen DeBoer operates. They hear his story. Was at an NAIA school in Sioux Falls. He comes over from the West Coast. His conference blew up, so now he's in the SEC. I guess his old school went to the Big Ten, so it's hard to really give him too much of a hard time. But you hear the sentiment I'm saying here. Alabama, I think for the first time in a long time, is a lot easier to root for. Now, if you're a Tennessee fan or you're an Auburn fan, probably even if you're a Georgia fan, you're like, I will never root for Alabama. And that's fine. I mean, I'm not asking you to, but I think the overall college football public now is watching Alabama with a different lens. And so I think Alabama, both on paper, from the names on that roster and the nameplate on the head coach's office, and the narrative around them, I think, is most changed. Now, here's the most boring one, and we have to include it because it's just a must for when it comes to superlatives. Most likely to succeed. And I'll tell you what, I'll go back to my high school days. I went to high school with an individual named Jake Olson. And Jake Olson, before he graduated, had not one but two college game day pieces on his life. He had wrote a book. He had spoke around the country inspirationally, and he had told his story. Now, Jake Olson went blind in middle school. He ultimately ended up playing high school football for us, long snapping at Orange Lutheran, and then was set to go walk on at USC and long snap for the USC Trojans. And so you probably know his game day piece, his third game day piece that eventually aired when he snapped there. So the bottom line here is when it came time for most likely to succeed, nobody was holding their breath. We all knew it was about to be Jake Olson. Okay, so the same thing is true here. When it comes to most likely to succeed, it's it's not Alabama, it's Georgia and it's Texas. Got Alabama on the brain. Most likely to succeed, as boring as it is Georgia and Texas. And Texas, for me, say what you want about them having their first year in the SEC. Quinn Ewers is one of the best quarterbacks in college football. Steve Sarkisian has been to the college football playoff. That roster is in position, I believe, to compete day one in the SEC. And you say they lost Adonai Mitchell, they lost Xavier Worthy. That's true. Look at what they did in the portal. They didn't just land a couple of JUCO transfers, some FCS guys. They landed Isaiah Bond, proven commodity in the SEC. They went out and landed Silas Bolden, who I think is one of the best kept secrets in college football, Swiss Army knife at Oregon State. Like, they got some dudes now to replenish the production they had previously. So on paper, they can compete. And more importantly, the culture at Texas, I think, is more stable than it's ever been under Steve Sarkisian. People see the logo of Texas. They hear the Texas talking points preseason, and it's, oh, man, here we go again. That burnt orange Kool-Aid, here we go again. That's Texas for you. Maybe that was old Texas. That wasn't Steve Sarkisian's Texas. Steve Sarkisian, in the short time he's been there, has achieved at a really high level. He's got some accolades to his name. It's not just what they could be. They've done it now. They've won the Big 12 their last year in there. They've gone to the college football playoff. They've recruited at a high level. So all those things I believe are true of Texas that makes them, in my opinion, this year in 2024, most likely to succeed, right along with the Georgia Bulldogs. And Georgia now, again, it's boring. Yes, it's boring. It's a boring superlative to give out and a boring superlative, quite frankly, to achieve, because the roster, I think, is as good, if not better, than anyone else in college football. You got the best head coach in the sport. I would say pretty confidently today, I think you have the best quarterback in the sport. But here's the thing with Georgia that we've said for a while now that probably needs to be echoed as we sit here in media days about to jump into the 2024 season. The chip on their shoulder should scare everybody in the sport. Because it used to be, hey, you got to defend the title. You gotta every single year for Kirby Smart, get in that team room and tell those guys they haven't done anything when a lot of those guys were on national championship squads. That's not this team. Carson Beck, he's never been the starting quarterback for a national title team. So this isn't an entitled group, and Kirby Smart is able to tell these guys, hey, you didn't get there last year. What are you going to do this year? That's scary for college football. I've talked about my expanded playoff take with Georgia, giving them a mulligan to let a 10-2 Georgia and 11-1 Georgia still into the dance with some motivation. It's dangerous. So Georgia, without question, one of the most likely to succeed teams in the SEC and college football in 2024. So let me know in the comment section. Let me know in the chat right now. Who do you believe is most likely to succeed? Also, throw me your superlatives. We threw a couple out there from Mentos and Coke situations, the punchline culture, and all those things. Let me know some of your superlatives, whether it be adding on to what we said or your own superlatives you want to give out. within the SEC in 2024. All right, set to be joined here by Paul Finebaum in a matter of give or take 10-ish minutes. Excited to have that conversation with him. Again, friendly reminder, if you're watching live or if you're listening on podcast, there's going to be some commotion. All right, he's going to sit down in this chair and pick up the mic. It'll be a real good time, but just it's live, all right? It's live as live gets, and so we appreciate y'all sitting tight with us. Let's talk about something that Paul Finebaum said, though, before he gets here. We'll ask him about it when he sits down as well. He compared Kirby Smart and Nick Saban. And that wasn't the first time somebody's done that, but I think the actual quote that he had about how those two relate to each other and maybe how Kirby stacks up next to Saban right now, I think it's important. So, again, we'll get his take on it when he gets here, but I want to read you this quote. He said, they, being Georgia, are what Alabama was about 5 or 6 years ago. He went on to say they have it because they recruited at such a high level. So what do the numbers tell us here about this statement? Kirby, if he wins a national championship this season at Georgia, will have won 3 national titles in 4 years. Nick Saban, he did that from 2009 to 2012, 3 natties in 4 years. The last 3 years for Kirby Smart, he's gone 42-2, so only 2 losses. So focus on that losses number because the season length has changed a little bit. But Nick Saban, his first 3 years of that title run, of that 4 title run rather, from 2009 to 2012, first 3 years of that, he had 4 losses. So take it that as you will. We're kind of splitting hairs there when it comes to the losses number, but overall, it's fair to comp those two and to comp those runs rather when it comes to what they've done from a losses perspective. At a macro level, both recruit creme de la creme. All right, like both are living in the nicest neighborhoods when it comes to who they are recruiting. Pretty much at worst, it's going to be a number 3 ranked class for a Georgia right now. It's pretty much the same deal for Alabama. They pretty much live in that top 2 range, if not the top class. Kirby, I think, absolutely can be on the same level as Nick Saban. Like, accolades are obviously going to tell the story, but look at how they're trending. Nick Saban didn't win his first national championship until his 10th season as a head coach. His 10th season. Now, Kirby Smart, granted, probably inherited a better situation at Georgia to have his first head coaching job, but he got his first national title in year 6. Nick Saban coached until his 70s. Kirby Smart right now, he's 48. Let's assume he's got around 20 more years to coach college football. You're telling me he can't make up some ground on Nick Saban's 7 national titles when Kirby's got 2 right now? Probably has had the best team in college football the last 3 years. If he was able to stay with a healthy roster, maybe they win a 3rd last year. I'm just saying, I think the thought process around this, I understand it's a little bit shocking to the senses to compare someone to Nick Saban already, but Kirby Smart is trending in that direction. Like it or not, that's the truth. Now, here's the deal. This year is going to be a great test for Kirby Smart at Georgia in relation to what Nick Saban did at Alabama. And what I mean by that is every single year at Alabama, things changed. That's how it is in college football, but especially at Alabama. You saw a really high degree of turnover at the coordinator position. It felt like every other year you had a new coordinator. 1, that's tough to recruit with. 2, that's tough to build with when it comes to being able to have continuity for the guy still on your roster. But every single year, Bama was Bama. Why? Because it was Nick Saban. Take it a step further. The game changed a lot when Nick Saban was the head coach at Alabama. From the BCS to the playoff, things changed quite a bit while he was there. He continued to evolve, to adapt the way the game was played. Schematically, up-tempo offenses, that became more in vogue. So what does Saban do? He adapts. Saban was a master at adapting. Kirby Smart, this upcoming season, is going to have to continue to adapt. He's won 2 national titles. He's done both of them in the 4-team playoff model. He's done both of them with Stetson Bennett at quarterback. He's done both of them with Todd Monken as his OC. Now, Georgia hasn't won a national title with their current set of circumstances with Carson Beck at quarterback and Mike Bobo as his OC. But I do think it's worth noting all the staff changes they've had at Georgia are going to add another degree of difficulty to what they want to do in 2024. Now, when I say degree of difficulty, I'm not speaking to the caliber of hires. I'm speaking to the chemistry you have to have within your staff to compete at the highest level. You got to all be on the same page. And so my point in saying all this is Nick Saban had to continue to evolve, and Alabama had to evolve with him. Kirby Smart, I believe, is doing that. I believe will do that. But this year, with all the staff changes, from running back coach to receiver coach, when you have success, guys get better jobs on your staff. And I promise you, Kirby Smart is happy for that. He's happy for those guys. But at the same time, like, it presents some challenges for him in 2024. This will be a really good gauge for us and really interesting for us to see how he takes that head on. But I think it's also worth noting now, as we compare Nick Saban and Kirby, people were having the same conversation that we're about to have about Saban and Kirby, about Bear Bryant and Nick Saban. And what I mean by that is the era. The era was different for Bear Bryant and Nick Saban. Obviously, that's a pretty extreme example, but I think for Kirby Smart and what his college football is going forward now, if he were to win multiple national titles, do we grade him on a curve? If he gets to 5, are we saying, well, yes, but he did it in the NIL era, in the portal era, in the era of the expanded playoff, in the era of Texas and Oklahoma in the SEC, and who knows who else and what other conference? Like, I'm curious how that conversation evolves. But I'll just say, this is the year for Kirby Smart to really put a dent in that conversation with the comp between him and Nick Saban, to really gain some ground and have 3 and 4 years and have that discussion around, did he do it in a more difficult era? Remains to be seen, but I don't think what Paul Finebaum is saying is far off by any stretch. Now, the accolades, again, he's still got to catch up to him from a national titles perspective, but how he has talent and how he recruits, he's always going to be in that discussion to win a national championship as long as they compete on the recruiting trail at that level. So excited to talk to Paul about that here in a matter of minutes, but it's very, I think as college football fans, we're very lucky to be in an era where you have the GOAT of GOATs and Nick Saban. Outside of college football, I think you can make a case for him being the best coach of any sport, period, for what he's done so far and what he's done in his career. And then following up that era, you have Kirby Smart starting his run of potentially trying to be the GOAT in his own right. So it's a lot of fun for us college football fans, but curious to hear your thoughts there. All right, should be joined here by Paul Finebaum in a matter of give or take 5 or so minutes. I'm got my head on a swivel now, looking around the radio row. Think we're good to jump into our next segment, so we'll go ahead and do that. Appreciate everyone dialed in, man. Make sure you've liked the video. If you're listening on podcast, go ahead and leave us a review and subscribe to the feed. It helps us, and I'll say this again. I've said it many times. Y'all are crushing it on that side of things when it comes to leaving reviews and when it comes to boosting our show up the charts. YouTube's kind of our main form of giving you this content, and so for y'all to crush it on the podcast platform as well, we are extremely grateful for it. So we appreciate you for that. So let's keep on rolling here. Speaking of Nick Saban, he had something to say about Texas yesterday, which everyone's got something to say about Texas this time of year. I mean, it's their first year in the SEC. We got Oklahoma at Media Days today. But he said something on the air that I thought was worth unpacking together. He's on a panel with several different analysts from ESPN. He's in the main room. They're talking about Texas. And Nick Saban says, what tickles me is all the people asking questions about how Texas ran the conference they were in. He says, they're not going to run the SEC. And there's some laughter and, there's kind of some letdown from that comment. And then he says they'll be a great team. They'll be a great program, and Sark will do a great job, but that's not going to be a problem. Make sure you subscribe. College football, nothing but college football, live from Radio Row right now, live at SEC Media Days. We're here because y'all are allowing us to be here, because y'all are watching the content, because y'all are supporting the channel, you're subscribing and all those things. So thank you for that. If you love college football, welcome home. Make sure you subscribe. So you hear that quote from Nick Saban about how Texas is not going to run the SEC. And all of the Southeastern Conference home turfers say, darn right, not going to happen. Not in our conference. Not going to walk in here and take over. And to be fair, I don't think what he's saying is an untrue statement. Like Georgia, I've said many times, I think they've been the best team in college football the last 3 seasons. They've won the SEC once. They won 2 national titles in the last 3 years. They won the SEC once. So translation, it's a really freaking hard conference, man. It is. This conference is absolutely brutal. If you don't believe me, look at the caliber of player that goes from the SEC and then makes to the NFL. Spoiler alert, it's more than every other conference. So the bottom line here is, yes, the SEC is ridiculous, very, very tough. There was probably a portion of the Texas fan base that heard that and said, isn't this the guy that we beat in Tuscaloosa by double digits? It was 10, could have made it 17 if we had chosen to keep on driving. I don't think that's really the bargaining chip you want to go forward with here if you're a Texas fan, because that's Nick Saban, the greatest of all time. But, say what you want to say right now. It's July. So I think that's one part of it. Yeah, it's a very difficult conference. It's very difficult to run. Nick Saban's run it before. It is what it is. But I also would say I have a little bit of a question about the people that Nick Saban is taking this temperature from. Who is Nick Saban hearing this from? Because Texas ain't run the Big 12. And God bless Texas. They were the best team in the conference last year. They proved that. They won the Big 12. They'd only won the Big 12 4 times. Winning the conference 4 times is not running your conference. So that's first off. Second off, I don't think there's really any rational Texas fan, and there's a lot more of them out there, contrary to maybe public opinion, that feels this way. Like, I think Texas fans understand that they're walking into a more difficult environment than the Big 12 has been for them. I think they understand that it's going to be a week in and week out grind. It's one thing to understand that. It's a whole other thing to actually go throughout the course of a season and go through it. But Texas walking into the SEC, they're not walking in the bottom half of that conference now. They're walking in, again, from where I'm standing, as one of the most likely to succeed. I'll just say that. I think Texas is going to be more than fine their first year in the SEC. But going back into what I was saying here, Texas fans, they're not expected to go run the conference. They're excited about the chance to play some of the best in college football, to be in the best conference in college football, and be considered one of the big boys in that regard. But I don't think anybody is looking at Texas right now as a rational Texas fan and saying, yep, we're about to run roughshod over this thing. Now, the unfortunate part is you got a lot of folks that are saying, well, Texas this, Texas that. We know what Texas is. We've seen Texas before. We know what they're about. You know what old Texas is about. You don't know what Steve Sarkisian Texas is about. Steve Sarkisian, in a very short amount of time, has flipped that program on its head and what they've done over the course of the last however many years and had a lot of success. Like, Texas under Steve Sarkisian is a new beast. Yes, from a roster level, how they've recruited in the trenches, how they've built that side of the football up defensively a lot better. That's true. They're better there, but also from a culture perspective. And there was not a better example than when Quinn Ewers went down last year, because when your quarterback goes down, you have a choice as a football team to make. Are we going to get behind our new guy, or are we going to panic? I didn't see Texas panic at all. I saw them found a way to lock in and get it done. So Texas, I think, absolutely will be a team that is a force in the SEC, but maybe not run the thing. I think that's fair to say. All right, joining us now, the man, the myth, the legend, the mouse of the South, Paul Finebaum. Paul, this is awesome, man. Thanks for making time. This is phenomenal.
Man, you're one of our favorite guests because, all my producers, does that guy not look good on TV? You should be in Hollywood, man. You shouldn't just be wasting time at SEC media days.
That's far too kind of you. I appreciate it. Do you enjoy this? Because you've been here your fair amount of times. Is this still enjoyable for you?
Let me go ahead and say it. I covered the first media days in 1985, so you don't need to do the math. Listen. I hear people complain about their jobs, but we're talking about college football. I was in Washington last week. I was on Capitol Hill, talked to some senators and various people. That would drive me crazy. Interviewing politicians all day, because if we think college football coaches obfuscate and mislead, go to Washington.
I'll take your word for that. I'll take your word for that. Let's get to some football. You had something to say about Kirby Smart and Nick Saban. Accolades aside, how far do you feel like the gap is between where Kirby Smart is right now and ultimately Nick Saban?
I think Kirby Smart, the only reason I can't say this emphatically because I've seen them together, but I think they're the same person, except Kirby Smart was 47 years old? Nick Saban, 72. And working for ESPN. Kirby Smart is the best coach in college football, and he is Nick Saban. I think he's better at his age than Nick Saban was at his age, and I think it's scary. I could give you the crazy, Kirby Smart's going to win more national championships than Nick Saban, but I think he's going to contend with it at some point. He's that good.
Is it one of those things where we have to grade him on a curve because we talk about Nick Saban and the era that he coached in with the BCS and the 14 playoff, like Kirby Smart, if he goes and wins, let's just say 2 more national championships, it'll be in the NIL era, the portal era, the 12-team playoff. Does that factor into your mind in that discussion?
No, I mean, I think the hard thing is to look at Saban and compare him to Bryant.
Mm-hmm.
I covered the last 2 years of Paul Bryant, so are his 6 championships comparable? So I think it's harder to win now because Bryant won a couple that, let's be honest, were illegitimate.
Yeah.
Bear Bryant won a national championship in 1973, and he lost the Sugar Bowl against Notre Dame in a 1-2 game.
Yeah, they don't talk about that.
You don't
one.
do that.
They don't talk about
Saban
that.
Saban doesn't have any of those.
Yeah.
I mean, his championship at LSU was, I think, a split, but he won the one that mattered.
Sure.
So I think it gets harder. I was on with Mad Dog Russo today, who I think seriously needs to see a therapist. But he was telling me how much more difficult it's going to be for Kirby Smart. So, he could lose a game. I said, of course he could lose a game.
Yeah.
He lost a game last year and it cost him a championship.
Yeah.
He can lose a game this year and it won't matter. Yeah, you still have to win maybe 3 or 4 playoff games, but I'm not worried about that.
I'm with you. The idea of Georgia being able to lose 2 games and still go on a run to win a national title should be terrifying for the rest of college football. We're here in Dallas for a reason. Oklahoma and Texas joining the conference. Let's start with Oklahoma. What's going to be the toughest part for them about acclimating to the SEC?
I just think it's the transitional period. I don't completely buy, they've been playing the Big 12. They have, but Texas did go to Alabama last year. I think that ended their debate. Mm-hmm. I think Oklahoma is not quite at the level of where that program has been with Baker Mayfield and Kyler Murray and all those guys. But I don't think they're far from it either. But the problem nowadays, by the way, I've heard you say this on our show countless times, so I'll try to sound smart because I take notes. There's a fine line. There's 3 or 4 games that will tip the scales, and now, as we have said ad nauseum, if you're Tennessee, if you're LSU, if you're Ole Miss, if you're Missouri, you're in that pack where you have to turn a game or you're not going to make the playoffs. So I think it's exciting from that standpoint, but it's still Georgia up here and Texas hanging around, and I don't know who is it Alabama? Is it all?
Sure.
I mean, I'll leave it to you.
Sure. And I guess the beautiful part is we'll find out here in a matter of a couple of months. That field doesn't tell any lies from what I've been told.
Yeah, I love the commentator at Media Days, and you've interviewed them all and go, I could be wrong. Of course, we're always wrong.
Yeah.
But when you make a prediction, never have any doubt.
There you go.
And that's one thing I admire about you is that you spit it out, and it doesn't matter whether it's right or not.
There you go.
You're confident in your opinion.
I appreciate that. That's very kind of you. How do you feel about Texas? This first year in the SEC, you mentioned them in comparison to Georgia and being kind of that top of the food chain more or less in the SEC. Where do you see them first year in this conference?
They're probably number 2, and the reason is they have an elite quarterback, and the guy after the elite quarterback maybe better. I don't know, but I like having him as a backup. And secondly, their recruiting is so deep, as I've heard you point out so many different times, and they're ready. Texas is not in need of anything. Mm-hmm. I mean, I love their attitude. I was out there 2 weeks ago for the celebration, and is it bigger and better? Yeah, we had a 4-hour show, and if you were watching, it looked like there were 50,000 people there, and we were yucking it up. 50,000 people have showed up to welcome Texas. Wrong. They were actually there for a Pitbull concert, but we didn't tell anybody that.
Yeah, that'll draw a crowd.
Yeah.
Mr. Worldwide, when he gets on the mic, that people show up in droves. To your point, too, quarterback science says if you have someone named Manning on your roster, usually a good thing. Last question for you here, Paul. We appreciate all your time. Who's the team we're all wrong about? Like, we're sitting here at Media Days, just talking season, we're all making our predictions. Who's the team in your mind that, like, hey, everyone's going this way on this team? Not so fast, my friend.
I think it could be Florida. And by the way, I don't know why I say that, because I'm the one who's been asking every guest for the last 6 months, what do you think about Florida? But all they need to do, I mean, their expectations, it might be as low as they've ever been. I mean, I remember, Tim Tebow told me not long ago that in 2009, this was in the Swamp Kings Netflix thing last year, he said he walked into the stadium and started really crying because they only had 2 national championship banners up and they should have had 3. Mm-hmm. That was their expectation 15 years ago. And now it's, well, if Billy Napier could win 7 games, mm-hmm. that would be it. So I don't think they have much to prove that we're all, and knowing my business, Billy Napier beats Miami and starts and maybe beats a couple of, we're going to be, hey, Billy Napier, early favorite for Coach of the Year. It's that. Now, again, if he loses to Miami, forget everything I just said.
Fair enough. Well, Paul, we appreciate you making time. Appreciate what you do for college football. And the busiest man at SEC Media Days, making it happen. That's you. That's you. You're making the rounds here. We just got to sit at this desk and talk about it, and you got people tugging on your shirt saying, come join us. So thank you for making time, man.
It is awesome. My pleasure. So good to see you.
Awesome. Paul Finebaum, again, the mouth of the South, making time for us here, just live on YouTube. So we appreciate you making time, Paul. Awesome. And you can set that down whenever you're ready to roll, man. We're just talking ball on YouTube here, but live and live in color. Again, best in the business, man. Best in the business. We appreciate him making time. And appreciate y'all sitting tight with us here on the YouTube channel, man, as we got the man, the myth, the legend here on the show. That was a blast. That's one of the cool parts about Media Days. Like, you look to your left, there's Nick Saban. Look to your right, there's Paul Finebaum. And then you look in the middle, and we got the hard count going on somewhere on Radio Row, which we are more than grateful to have that be a reality. So listen, there's no really easy way to pivot from that. There's no really easy way to follow a Paul Finebaum interview, but we're going to do our very best with talking about the most anticipated thing, not game, most anticipated thing in the last 11 years. And that is the release of College Football 25. Now, I told this story at the top of this show, but if you're tuning in as a one-off video, make sure you're subscribed. We appreciate you for that. Around 4 o'clock yesterday, Radio Row slowly but surely started to thin out. And I think some part of that is, okay, the day's winding down, but you look around and it's like, no, there's still, shows going on. There's still teams that are walking around here having their media time. And what it ended up being, to my understanding, was, the game released. And so you have one by one, and eventually it turns into crowds of people walking up to their room, getting on the game, and reliving a memory from either their adolescence or their younger years or high school, whatever it was. And so I played this game last night, and I'll tell y'all what, man, the expectations were so high. And when the bar is set way up here, man, it's hard to reach. It's hard to surpass an expectation of having this thing be 10 out of 10. Y'all, EA Sports did that. Played 2 games last night. I'll give you my thoughts on them. But my first reaction to this game, I sat there with that controller in my hand on the Play Now screen, scrolling through. We're trying to figure out how to scroll through different options to play against different teams. And I was just giddy. I was genuinely laughing out loud that this was happening. And I don't think I was alone in that response. The response from the college football community, period, was just, it was pure bliss. Because this was, yes, it's a game, and I understand that it's a video game. I'm not a big video game guy to begin with, but this in itself, it's not a game. This is a memory. For a lot of us, this is our childhood. This is what we did to pass the time from the end of college football season to the beginning of college football season. This was our fix before this sport was covered in a year-round capacity as it is right now. And so to see that be a sentiment that everyone held across the board, that was special. That was a moment culturally in time, I believe, that we all got to be a part of together, and just made you smile, made you feel good. The details of this game are crazy. I mean, they are intense. I played a game. I did randoms in the SEC against a colleague of mine. He drew Tennessee. I drew Missouri. Played the game at Neyland Stadium. We've been Neyland Stadium, so we have something to refer to. It looked extremely real. To see that on the game and actually compare it to cell phone footage of what we've taken from our visit there, it was very, very comparable. The actual uniforms as well, EA knocked those out of the park. Missouri, they had the sailor helmet logos. If you know me, you know I have a very deep passion for the sailor logos in college football, even deeper passion of putting the sailor logos on college football helmets. Baylor does it. Missouri does it. Missouri had that helmet in the game. That was absolutely incredible. And also the playbooks. They were true to the teams that we were playing with. I played with Texas Tech one game. I played with Missouri one game. And Missouri, the spread formation, the way that you could isolate Luther Burden, the option game, all that was in the game. That was so, so cool. The way that EA nailed the realism and the details of this game. I mean, just like everything you would hoped it would be. In terms of gameplay, running the football, man, you had heard a lot of buzz around that from folks like Andy Staples, who actually got to play the game early, and from different trailers that EA put out. That was an incredible feature, how they've improved that gameplay. Because for myself, for those of y'all that don't know, I played running back in college. And so I have a certain gauge for how I'm going to read the different run plays, like inside zone, first down lineman to a play side out. When I got power, I'm getting in the Polar's pocket and trying to just follow him to green grass. And so being able to actually use those same rules in the game and have them work, I'm not telling you that it's a one-to-one comparison from playing real college football to playing college football 25, the video game, but I'm telling you it's pretty darn close. They nailed that. The RPO feature, the RPO gameplay that you have now, the run-pass option, as every analyst wants to tell you about during a Sunday night broadcast in the NFL, that was really, really cool how they've adapted that to the gameplay. Because the last time we had this game, RPO stuff was starting to become more in vogue, but now, like, everybody and their mama has an RPO couple of plays they want to run. The way that you have to actually press the button you're throwing the football to instead of having to press the button to give to the running back in that game, really, really fun. It's tricky, quite frankly, just like a real RPO, but a lot of fun to read that defense. Full transparency, I still kind of suck at tackling in this game. I'm hoping that as I play this game more, I'll evolve in that skill set. But we got some room to work with. Again, going back to the realism, it's really hard to tackle in real life. In the old Maddens and in the old NCAAs, it was like if you just kind of run into that guy at half speed, you'll tackle him. Not in this game. Not in this game. Now, the last feature I want to talk you through, which we knew was coming, but to actually play with it in real life was wild. The star players in this game are truly stars. Like, I had Luther Burden at Missouri. Y'all, he was untouchable. I started off the game, I was like, I wonder how good he is. I wonder if I feed him the football a few times, can he get open? Can he make contested catches? Like, what is this like? Y'all, he is a cheat code. If you draw Missouri in one of your randoms for any time playing college football 25, play with them, get the ball to number 3, and enjoy whooping your best friend, all right? Because he is unreal. I think he had like 4 touchdown catches in the first half for me. I was drawing up plays that like really shouldn't have worked, but you got Luther Burden catching the football, so it worked. And that's what real college football is too. Like, you got a walk-on versus a first-round pick, or a day 3, day 2 NFL draft pick and a day 1 NFL draft pick, Luther Burden. Like, yeah, there should be a pretty sizable talent gap there. They captured that perfectly. James Pierce, also, I played against him. He is a freak show in real life. He's a freak show in this game, and that was captured. I will toot my own horn here. All I'm going to say, I wasn't sure how I would do. I told y'all walking into this thing, I played a game of Madden not that long ago. I got throttled. So all my confidence walking into college football 25 just went down the drain. I was down bad for a good 24 to 36 hours. I wasn't sure what I was going to be. We walked into the arena yesterday, picked up the sticks, went 2-0. One was a blowout. One was a barn burner. Nonetheless, I'm undefeated in this game right now. I don't think any of you whack defensive coordinators want to see me on the sticks. I'll leave it at that. So college football 25, it's out. It's a great time. The game is incredible. The details are incredible. For us as college football fans, it's like singing an old friend. We're back. We're so back. Man, fun show today. Fun show. I see someone in the live chat say PlayStation or Xbox guy. I'm a PlayStation guy. I played on Xbox last night, so I mean, I'm just saying, some versatility there. Appreciate y'all being tuned in live, man, on Radio Row. This is so fun. Like, I am legitimately feeling like a kid on Christmas morning, being able to sit here, know the college football season is around the corner, and have just some really, really exciting things on the horizon, both with the show and with college football season. Like, it's go time. It is go time. So make sure you're subscribed. Make sure you are locked in here. Going to leave you with our conversation with Garrett Nussmeier. I was rolling into the end of the show there, actually, before we got some common sense knocked into us here. Hallelujah. Obviously, we're live on location, so we're going to throw it now to our Garrett Nussmeier interview. But appreciate y'all being locked in. Appreciate y'all making this show what it is. We are back on the air tomorrow morning. Same spot, same channel, same time, 11 a.m. Eastern, 10 a.m. Central for my Texas folks. Have some more conversations to show y'all. We'll talk some more ball. It'll be a great time. But we love y'all. We appreciate y'all. We will see y'all next time. Here's that conversation with LSU starting quarterback, Garrett Nussmeier. here in Dallas at SEC Media Days with the man running the show out there in LSU, Garrett Nussmeier. Brother, one, how you doing?
Yeah,
Doing good. Happy to be here.
Yeah, appreciate you for having me.
Happy to have you here, man.
Yeah.
Two, what are we wearing? Because you're looking fresh. That's what I really want to get to here.
Shout out my people over in Baton Rouge. They got me right.
I like it. Who is this? Do we know? Is this like a name brand
I believe
or?
It's Cottages or something like that down there.
I like it.
It's just a little small little boutique type thing over there in BR. So.
Looking
shout out
fresh.
Them. Yes, sir.
We were talking before we got on the air here, man. This is like a home game for you because you played high school football. Yeah. It's like a half hour from here?
Yeah, like 45, 30, 35 minutes from here. Yes,
good to be back.
Yeah, it feels good. It feels good to be back.
Awesome, man. Well, let's start here. This is a nickname I've been trying to get some traction, and I want to hear your opinion because I get on the message boards and they say that nickname sucks. And I'm like,
I think I know
that's
where you're
fair.
going with this.
Just give me a letter grade on Gumbo Gunslinger. Dude, are we buying that? Are we selling that?
I like it.
Because you're the authoritative source on it.
Here's the deal. I love it. I think it's fire, but it's up to the people. You know what I'm saying? If they don't like it, then we got to just, I don't know. The Nuss Bus is kind of already stuck from what I'm seeing, so I like that. I've always kind of called myself Nuss Bus, just like messing around. So like when it kind of took off, I was like, all right, let's understand it a little bit. And people used to like make fun of me in high school and call me the Nuss Bus. So like, no, I get that one, but I like the Gumbo Gunslinger too. I mean, but like I said, that's not up to me. So.
Do you like gumbo? That's probably a good question.
My mom cooks chicken and sausage, and my grandma cooks seafood gumbo. So both of theirs, that's the best type of gumbo I could ever have.
Okay, so at least it fits in that regard.
Yeah.
Okay,
gumbo,
good.
Yeah.
That's all. Okay, so we'll leave it up to the people, but I'm glad to hear that we have, at least on the depth chart, it's like maybe second.
Yeah, it's up there for
sure.
Cool.
We'll take it. Yeah. We'll take it. Well, brother, going into year 3 of the Brian Kelly regime, what's the vibe like, man, compared to previous years for you?
It's definitely different. Just the way that things have changed, and as far as like day-to-day interactions. Mm-hmm. I feel like last year we believed what Coach Kelly was saying as a unit, but I don't know that people started to act on it as much as they should have. And this year I think not only do we believe in what he preaches, but we also know that it works. And I think the team has bought into doing the actions that are necessary. I think a little bit last year also was doing, what was necessary, but I don't know that they was doing what was extra. Mm-hmm. I could say the other day was one of the first times on a Saturday that I've seen multiple position groups working at the same time. It just feels like it's a different vibe, as far as the amount of buy-in from the entire roster, top to bottom.
And what's that been like for you? Because you mentioned kind of the player-led aspect of this. What's that been like for you now being the guy in Baton Rouge kind of leading that charge? Yeah,
I mean, I'm blessed. I thank God every morning when I wake up, that this is the life I get to live right now. I feel like, I'm going to do everything I can, to be the best version of myself that I can be for my teammates, not just for myself. I've had to wait my turn and wait for my opportunity. And, now that it's here, I don't want to let it go to waste. I want to do, whatever I can to be the best leader possible, to be the best teammate possible.
And that leads perfectly into my next question, because if I were another coach in college football, I would be tampering so hard, bro. I would be like, he's not. He could start for us. He could start for us tomorrow. What went into that decision for you to say, you know what, I want to be here. I want to be at LSU. Why'd you stay?
Yeah. Well, for me, I think it all starts when I go back to, making my decision in high school. I felt like, God brought me to LSU for a reason, and when I was making a decision through lots of prayers and things like that. And so, I didn't feel like it was my job to just up and leave. I felt like that was almost distrusting in him. I felt like God brought me there for a reason, and he has a plan, and his timing is always correct. And, I think a lot of times in life, we want things right away. And, I can say that I was guilty of that. I love football. I wanted to play, and so there was very, very high temptation there. But I felt like, the state of Louisiana was my home, and God brought me there for a reason. I love this university. I love the state. I want to be in LSU. Actually, Baton Rouge has been the longest I've ever lived anywhere in my entire life so far. And so, I felt like, it was my duty to just keep my head down, trust in his timing, and just work and continue to get better.
What did you feel like you learned getting to sit behind a guy who won the Heisman Trophy in Jane Daniels?
Yeah, I learned a lot, obviously. Our skill sets are obviously very different. So I feel like on the field, I kind of got to watch and just almost be in awe of the things that he was able to do. But the most that I learned from Jaden was off the field and just how he studied and how he prepared, how he interacted with his teammates, what he did on a day-to-day basis, how he led, and he was a guy that, had played a lot of football and 5-year starter in college football. So, I had 0 starts at the time, so just getting to learn and how to act as a starter, what to do, when to watch tape, what to watch, things like that. That's what I took the most away from Jaden.
Hey, don't knock the wheels now, too. I know you can take off.
Yeah,
I'm in college football 25 later. I'm running with Garrett Nussmeier.
Let's do it.
I'm
Let's
getting
do it.
some.
Hey, I'm going to get out of there every once in a while when it's necessary. You know it.
I love it, man. So Mike Denbrock, gone Notre Dame. Joe Sloan taking over the offense. What's that transition been like? How different has it been compared to the previous system?
I mean, I wouldn't say it's been that much different. I know Coach Sloan had a lot in hand with the offense that we were running last year. And so, he's done an unbelievable job, as he's taken over. And I think it also helps, just with the relationship that we've been able to build over the last 3 years. If you've been to an LSU practice, you've heard Joe Sloan absolutely ripping me. And that's just the way it is. He's hard on me. I have a lot of love for him. We're very honest with each other. He was that way with me when he first got there. He was honest with me, told me what he thought I needed to improve on, and he helped me set a plan. And he's done an unbelievable job of helping me to continue to grow and to follow that plan.
There's a social media clip of you addressing the team, like I think it's maybe post early morning workout or post player-led workout, and you essentially just lay it out for everybody like, hey, it means something to be here at LSU. Why does it mean so much to you to be an LSU Tiger?
Yeah, I mean, I think, growing up, I moved so many times, and I was born in Lake Charles. Lake Charles, Louisiana is my home. It's where all my mom's family is. And so the only constant place I've ever had in my life was Lake Charles, Louisiana, and the state of Louisiana. And, being in Baton Rouge, like I said, is the longest I've ever lived anywhere. So the state of Louisiana, I don't know what it is, but it means something to me. It means the world to me. And so, obviously LSU is the big school in the state. And so we represent not just LSU, but we also represent the entire state of Louisiana. So being a quarterback or being a player, being a starter at LSU, you are representing every single person in that entire state. And that means something. It's not just, it's like I said, I believe in the clip, it's a privilege, and it comes with the pressure. It is what it is. You have to produce. It's a business at the end of the day as well. It's a cutthroat world, but that's how it is. You have to do your job and produce. So,
man, last question for you. Appreciate all your time. First game's a big one, obviously, Sunday night in Vegas. I've been saying it's going to be the best movie in Vegas since The Hangover. What's going through your mind walking out on that field before y'all go to battle?
Yeah, I mean, I can't wait. I'm itching to get there. It's hard. It's like the season's 2 months away, don't worry about it. But at the same time, you're like, the season's 2 months away. It's like it's almost here. Obviously, we're going to try and the politically correct answers. We're going to try and take it day by day, right? And which we will. But I can't wait to get out there and play some football. It's been a long time.
It's that man, the Nuss Bus Gumbo Gunslinger, Garrett Nussmeier.
Yes, sir.
Brother, have a blast. We appreciate your time, and
Yes,
it's been a good time, man. Excited to watch you ball.
Thank you for having me.
Good
God
stuff.
bless.